Good morning. Welcome to Marketing Over Coffee. I'm John Wall.
I'm Christopher Penn.
Let me do the special intro since this is a special episode.
Sure.
Good morning. Welcome to Marketing Over Coffee. I'm John Wall. Today, we always joke that it's our least special guest because he is very special, but he's also our co-host. So he's usually on here all the time. So having him here is not a big deal, but we do have great stuff to talk about, and it's not going to be the traditional news episode. But with that, let's welcome Mr. Christopher S. Penn.
Morning or afternoon or evening, depending on when you listen to this.
When you're live here. So what I wanted to do is, we normally are always talking news and topics that are, for the week, kind of what's happening, what's new with tools. But you've been doing a lot of stuff over the past year now on artificial intelligence and its impact on marketing and PR. And I don't see anybody else kind of doing much in this space. There's been some talk about bots and a few things on that front. But I thought it would be great to step back and let's do this more as a full feature interview and talk to you about what you've been doing and where you've been going with it. So to give everybody the baseline, we talk about artificial intelligence and machine learning. Break those down for us to start with so that we start at the right place here. Is that basically the same thing, or do you define those separately?
They are defined separately. So machine learning is exactly what it sounds like. A machine or an algorithm has the ability to learn itself, to make iterative changes to things. So for example, a super simple example of machine learning is if you were to go into Excel and you type in 1 and then type in 2 in the next cell and you drag down, and it recognizes a pattern, and you just drag down the next cells. That's like a super simplified example of machine learning. And machine learning isn't artificial intelligence in the sense that it is still algorithm based. The machine isn't necessarily creating anything new. It is extrapolating from what is already there. And extending it. And we've been using machine learning in marketing as a profession for probably more than a decade. It may not be something that that you are using, but it is something that it is built into the products and tools that you're using. I think is the best way to do it. It's to explain it, you are, every time you open up Google Analytics, every time you open up Excel, anytime you are using any of the social media tools like Buffer, you're using machine learning tools behind the scenes.
Okay, and then these systems, are we to a point where I know there were kind of two major schools of thought, where one was, you would take some kind of framework and you would just continually pump information into it, basically as if it were a child that was being taught, and another avenue of building a machine that could learn on its own. But it seems like nobody has really cracked anything on that front. Is that still a major difference between approaches to this?
Well, so the machine that can learn on its own, that is more or less the definition of artificial intelligence, where instead of, like, we as human beings are able to do what's called cognition, which is problem solving, it's learning, it's extending the knowledge we have into things that we don't have. So a really good example is anything creative. Anytime that you are writing, you're publishing content, you are taking a photo, you're making something new. You're not extending. You're still using letters and words and things when you write a blog post, but you're writing something new. You're not taking existing data and trying to extend it. Otherwise, if you wrote a blog post about Excel last week, this week you're going to write 8 more blog posts about Excel. That's not how I hope we work. If you look at our blogs, you see this our Friday food blogging thing, right? What I built out of PVC this week, and that's what true intelligence does. So for machines to be able to expand and create new stuff, that's where you see the difference. Machine learning is a necessary subset of artificial intelligence, but artificial intelligence is not just machine learning.
Okay, so that sets that up. So now, and what's the crossover? Where do you see this applying to marketing? What kind of stuff are you testing, and where are the opportunities here?
So there's really 4 big providers of all these different AI tools. You have Amazon, you have Google, you have Facebook, you have IBM, are the 4 major players whose stuff you can pick up and work with. And plus the open source movement. There's a tremendous amount of AI tools that are open source. Where we're starting to see this applied to marketing, where at least I'm trying to apply this stuff in marketing, lot on things like natural language processing. So to be able to take, IBM's Watson is probably one of the best examples of this. The ability to take a piece of unstructured text, a blog post, a piece of coverage in a newspaper, and have it based on its algorithms and its ability to essentially read like a human, tell me what's in this blog post. And the reason why you would do something like this is because you and I can read a blog post. We can read a few blog posts, but after a while, you reach the limits of your own personal attention span. Imagine having to read 12,000 or 50,000 blog posts or 100,000 blog posts or 100,000 news articles. We did a piece this week, actually. It's basically said that there are 124 new pieces of news published on Google News every second. That's a lot of news. And so we can't read it, but a machine can. And if these artificial intelligence algorithms can start to extract information from this to say, hey, this post is about Google Analytics, and it has sort of this kind of tone and this kind of personality. This post is about Google Analytics too, but it has a different tone. The machines can help us classify and manage this data. One area that I'm working with right now is in what's called IBM's personality insights. So it can take a piece of text and based on what it knows about human personalities and psychology, it can kind of fingerprint you, the author, and say, this is, who wrote, this is you, the author who wrote this, and these are the characteristics of your text. Imagine you're running a blogger influencer program for a brand, right? Let's say, Event Hero. Event Hero is looking for a blogger, some bloggers to write about an Event Hero. If I were to use this tool to fingerprint your tone of voice, your brand personality, then when I start screening bloggers who might be good influencers, you have 1 million followers on Twitter or whatever, but can I then take your content fingerprint and say whose tone of voice, whose personality is most similar to the Event Hero personality? And that way, when I put the two together, the audiences are probably similar because they're used to hearing the same thing. There's more synergy, if you will, between these two entities than, say, someone who doesn't have that tone of voice. So a really good example would be imagine that Event Hero is like a super conservative, very buttoned up by the numbers blog. And we present things very cleanly and articulately, and would you want my friend Scott Stratton to blog for you? Well, his tone of voice and personality is so different than that tone of voice that it might not be a good fit.
Okay, so that makes sense. So it's actually able to process just so much more information than a human ever could, or even a distributed human system, that it gives you huge advantage. That makes sense. So now I think, if I get this right, then, because you talked about the 4 major pillars right now, you've got Google, IBM, Amazon, and Facebook. So can we say that those 4 options are all built on their own information infrastructure, so that Google can do well because it's got all this search information. Amazon's got all this purchasing and product information and their own products. Is that kind of the main, differences between these different products, is that they've got their own sources of info, and that's what affects their accuracy and their approach?
No, well, yes and no. So it's not that you're leveraging Google's data, but you're right in that it's a type of data that each company works with that has led them to develop their own algorithms. So Google obviously is very much a search and find kind of company. Facebook is very much a conversation company. So their AI is dealing with how do you have conversations with humans. Amazon is a super predictive API. Like, hey, you bought this thing, you'll probably like these 3 things too. And then IBM is very much the whole cognitive Watson thing. It's very sort of fuzzy systems, the ability to try and behave like a human being. So you have these different companies. Their approaches to AI, like you said, are based on how they evolve them from their own needs. And most of them have been open sourcing at least portions of their software, so you can actually dig under the hood and see how Google thinks about AI by dissecting TensorFlow, how IBM thinks about AI by looking at SystemML, and all these pieces. And then you have to figure out, what kind of marketing problem do I have? Do I have a predictive problem? Do I have a discovery problem? Do I have a conversational problem? Do I have a cognitive problem? And then pick the solution set that works for you.
All right, well, we'll take a moment here when we're talking about big data. We have an offer only for MOC listeners. If you go to infer.com/MOC, enter your email, you'll see how their simulation system works, and you'll be rated as to whether Infer might be a fit for your organization. They've got a lot of new stuff out on profile management, just a lot of the stuff we've been talking about here, the ability to go in and take your Salesforce leads and classify them based on other sources of data that you normally would not be able to get to, available from third parties and other services, the thousands, hundreds of thousands of signals that Infer has put together. For this model and this promo, if you score above an 80, you'll get qualified to get you'll be qualified to get a free pre-model assessment. They'll examine your last 12 months of Salesforce data, give you a full report on lead conversion metrics, campaign effectiveness, optimal timeframes for lead conversion, all kinds of stuff. You can infuse intelligence into your sales and marketing stack, create lift with Infer. And yeah, we're going to have more on their program. They're actually opening up a new way to try this data, take it out for a test run. So more to come on that next week. We'll be rolling it out. So keep listening for that. And we thank Infer for their support of the program. Okay, so from those four, now you can say you've got both their data and their approach to AI. Of the four of them, is anybody doing much better work, or do you find that specific ones are right for specific tasks? Kind of what's your take on the state of the competition there?
Yeah, very much. Amazon so far has really been the laggard. They have a lot of machine learning capabilities, but not much in the way of actual AI capabilities. Facebook is sort of the newest player on the block, and they are focused very much on conversation, as you mentioned early on, bots and things. The knife fight, to the extent that there is one, is between Google and IBM. And of those two, right now, my money is on IBM, because Google is doing a lot with machine learning and AI to some degree, but it is less accessible to the average marketing technologist. If you are interested in picking up some of the stuff and running with it, IBM has a program called Bluemix that is their developer platform. And you can log into this thing and you get a certain amount of usage of their system for free every month. It's like 1,000 API calls, which if you're just tinkering around, you're never going to hit those numbers. But it gives you, with relatively little expense, other than getting the account set up and stuff, and this amount of services you consume, it gives you access to Watson. It gives you access to full cognitive computing, and the costs are extremely low. My bill last month was like 16 cents for API usage. And it's relatively easy to get started. You have to have access to development talent. You have to have access to coders, no matter any of these systems. There is nobody who has a plug and play, graphical only, drag and drop AI. It doesn't exist yet. Facebook is working on it, still not there. But of the ones, and I'm a terrible coder. I want to preface this conversation by saying that I'm a terrible coder. My code should never be used in production, yet strangely, somehow we end up that being the case all the time. And of all these systems, I've been able to get more of Watson to work for me in my work than any of the other systems.
Yeah, and how about let's dive into that just for a second. As far as tool stack, I mean, is it mostly kind of SQL type queries that are some kind of proprietary Watson language, or what's the stack that you need to do to touch this stuff?
So the big portions are you need to have working knowledge of the Python language, because Python is the way a lot of different things are written these days. You should have database experience. SQL is a portion of that, but there's also these huge other data systems that store, like Hadoop and Mongo and things like that, that require the ability to manipulate them. For getting started with marketing, the thing is that you don't need a lot in terms of super technical sophistication. If you think about, hey, I want to know what people have been saying about this presidential candidate. Okay, go into your social media monitoring system, extract all of the stuff that people said, put it in a database of some kind, and then tell the AI, think about it this way and do this kind of analysis for me. That's 20 lines of code, 15 or so libraries, and a database. That's in the grand scheme of things, that's not a heavy lift.
Right. Oh, so that's great. That's a great picture of how it works. So the idea is you're going to get some kind of huge data set and you throw it into, Hadoop or whatever kind of cloud-based database is working for you. And then you point the AI at it and have it run its queries, do its work, and come back to you with the result set. Is that?
Yeah, essentially, what you get back out of these different systems is usually it's an array of data that you then have to slice and dice. You can either put it back into a database or you can put it into visualization software. Really good example of one that I was working on earlier was trying to understand, of the tweets of mine that are popular, what topics do I tweet about that are the most popular, right? So I was able to extract all the data, do some segmentation up front to say, okay, the top 20% by retweets is what I'm going to look at. Feed that to the system. The system spits back an array. I put it into a visualization software and say, okay, now I know if I need some juice, these are the topics, these are the wells I can always go back to. Like, one of the funny things is I'm going to continue doing food posts on Fridays because people like a little, something a little lighter going into the weekend and stuff. And that's one of the conclusions you can draw from this data is like, yeah, these things do well on Fridays and they don't necessarily do well on other days of the week.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it is purely a Friday thing. You've kind of got to, both topic and specific day give you some juice. Yeah, I can totally see that work. So how about now other fronts that you see this working? There's been a lot of talk about bots and automated chat, and so obviously that's touching on a lot of this natural language processing, the ability to kind of figure out what questions are. Do you see this whole bot thing as continuing to grow and becoming kind of the first touch point? It seems to be the first point where we're getting kind of built solutions and easy access for everybody.
Bots are certainly one of the customer facing aspects, but where we're going to really feel this as marketers is actually on the analytics side. There's a hierarchy of analytics, right? So at the very bottom, you have the stuff, right? Then you have descriptive analytics, like this is the stuff, and here's what happened. And then you have predictive analytics, which is starting to get into machine learning territory, like what is likely to happen. Then you get prescriptive analytics, which is where you get true AI, like, hey, this is what we see in your data. Here's what you should do about this, right? This is kind of where I'm alluding to with and saying, I should do more food blog posts on Friday, right? That's a prescriptive solution. And then the last level is proactive, where the machine will actually execute on it for us, and we will not be involved other than to supervise. And that's going to change a lot of marketers' worlds, because right now, think about the amount of time that you spend as a marketer writing reports, doing presentations and PowerPoints and stuff like that, looking at your analytics charts. And then imagine a day where you connect all of your different tracking systems, your ad systems, your analytics systems, your web and social, and all these things. You put it all together, and the machine develops algorithms that says, when this happened, these things happen together, this is the result, we want this result. So it's automatically just start doing things for you. We may not need us as marketers as we are today. We may not have jobs if we don't evolve with the machines, if we don't evolve to learn to supervise them and to train them appropriately, because you don't need a human to do a lot of those repetitive tasks. Like, hey, it's sunny out, change my pay-per-click bid on my umbrellas by minus 50%. Yeah, a human's probably doing that at some companies today. You don't need a human to do that.
Yeah, to be able to dynamically move. And I can see there's just as much work in coaching and making sure those systems are running correctly and setting them up so that they do what they need to do. And it just gives you a much larger footprint. You can cover so much more ground and cover so much more data. So that makes sense. So analytics obviously is going to be a key point for marketing automation tools to become more powerful, kind of reach that next level. Do you see entirely new tools on this front then? I mean, obviously, it seems like there is opportunity here for these tools that integrate and then feed all the information over to the AI to be able to make decisions. Is this a new field that will spin up out of this?
It's so difficult to say because we can't see that far ahead. We can't project that far ahead. We can say, if you look in the news from this week, there was a thing in the Associated Press about all the minor league baseball reports are now being written by machine. So think about that. If a machine can write with reasonable intelligence from a data set and craft stuff that's indistinguishable from humans that people are using in production, well, do you need a blogging program? it may become a question of, do you need a human blogging program, or will an AI do a better job than you? And that's really going to be the acid test, is when the machines do a better job than we do, then what?
Yeah, I can totally see that being, because for minor league baseball, it's just tons and tons of stats, and being able to compile those and create an accurate picture. Yeah, much better suited to machine than to human to get an accurate source, and to be able to comb through all that data. It seems like there's a huge opportunity here too for identifying these trends as they open up then, because nobody's going to be able to find these emerging trends faster than the search engine indexes and other analytics systems, as opposed to us waiting to kind of until the meme finally hits us. You could have bots constantly scouring and doing a much better job of meme patrol and identifying newsjacking or other kind of tactics like that. No.
Yeah, I think about this. If you combine natural language processing, data processing, trend analysis and identification, and speech recognition, you could theoretically have a daily Marketing Over Coffee podcast where the machine identifies the top 5 trending stories in the entirety of the marketing world based on likelihood to retweet, and craft a show for us. And we just show up to basically do the intros.
Right, do the script that is provided to us. I'm gladly awaiting my robot masters to serve me up with doing all the creative stuff, as we say, with that. At this point too, we just want to pause and remind everyone that a portion of our expense is underwritten by TopTal. If you need developers or designers, TopTal Network is professionals in the top 3% of their trade. To learn more, visit the show notes for this episode over at marketingovercoffee.com. To learn more, visit the show notes for this episode over at marketingovercoffee.com. Okay, so now obviously we know that these systems are only as good as the data that they have at their disposal. Do you see a renaissance in data quality, or how is this just kind of the ongoing task, and now all this data is finally getting put to use? Kind of, where does the ability to fuel this thing come from?
Well, so that is, you've hit on exactly where where the gold is for a lot of companies. We have been collecting, as marketers, vast quantities of data that up until this point we haven't done squat with. We're sitting on these gold mines of databases, and because we don't have the ability, or we don't have the time or the resources to mine all that data, the early wins in this stuff is going to be, okay, yeah, you've got 22 years of purchase data plus 10 years of social data and stuff in the database. AI, go learn from this, figure out what's interesting, and then come back to me with a recommendation. Because it's kind of like, think of AI this way: anything you would tell your intern to do is something that you could conceivably tell an AI to do, because of the actual capabilities for learning and stuff. But again, it's something like your intern. You wouldn't say, hey intern, go rebalance the entirety of my organization's finances. Not the best idea in the world, right? So you probably shouldn't do that at first with an AI either. But you can certainly use its exploratory capabilities at scale to really dig into the gold mine that every single one of us is sitting on. If you think about it, how many different data fields are in just Google Analytics alone? And how many of them do you look at on a serious basis, dig in? You maybe look at 5, right, out of the several hundred in there. What if the AI found, hey, there actually is a significant relationship between stumble upon forwards and bounce rate on e-commerce pages where the item is colored blue, right? That's the kind of deep digging that these algorithms can do and develop on their own that we don't have the time to.
Yeah, I can see huge opportunity in all of those correlations that you just never. It's just like, it's so funny when you said how many data points. I was like 5, yeah, maybe. You're just not cutting into the data at all, and there could be all of these interesting correlations in there, and especially on the B2C side. It's like, how many of your friends should have the same kind of camera you have, or things like that. It just seems like there's huge potential in being able to better get a picture of how people interact, and who buys what and why they buy it and where they go. So yeah, it seems like there's just all kinds of opportunity in this space, and it seems like it'll be a great space to watch. So how about now, again, Google, IBM, Amazon, Facebook? It seems like these are just kind of being run as, one product in the whole book of stuff. All of these providers have these huge array of products and they're just kind of farming them out. Do you see at some point somebody actually kind of turning this on and making it a major product, or do you just kind of see it living as a, yeah, it's just, you're going to pay for your API calls. It's going to be a few bucks, but everybody's kind of in a wait and see stage. Is that going to be the next couple of years for us?
We're just already seeing vendors starting to bundle up the various products and things built. And when you look at how particularly IBM is structured internally, IBM and Amazon, they have the different tiers of API calls. They are blatantly saying, hey, come use our stuff, build on our stuff, make things with our stuff, and then mark it up, charge whatever you want. We're going to get paid on the usage side of things, but they are actively pushing really hard to get all of us building on these platforms. And we're starting to see that. The first pieces of software in the world they're a little on the clunky side. I saw one that proposed to be an all-knowing marketing AI. It's like, not really. Good try. I appreciate the thinking behind it, but very clearly not there yet.
All right. How about other topics too? Is there anything that we haven't hit on that's, you've seen recently that it gives you some reason to believe there's something big coming or big developments in this space now?
So the real interesting thing is going to be when we start blending AIs with Internet of Things, with the physical world objects, and the ability for physical world objects to start integrating with AIs. That's where this stuff's going to get really interesting. There was a piece that IBM shared recently about a law enforcement droid, which looks like a Dalek, actually. It's like this big cone-shaped thing with all these little blue eyes. And it's nothing more than basically it's a roving security camera right now. You can't taser you. But the ability for us to be able to start taking inputs from the physical world to an AI and then sending it back to the physical world is pretty stellar. There was a piece done recently with I'm trying to remember, Molson, the Canadian brewing company, set up a machine in Toronto that you had to say "I am Canadian" and it would open up and hand out free beers. But the catch was you had to say it in 6 different languages, and the AI behind it could do speech recognition in all these different world languages, and be able to key it in. And so that's a really a today example of how this is starting to emerge. But even think about stuff like on your smartphone, Google has Translate that you hold up the camera and it will auto translate text that its AIs can recognize, do image recognition on, and then translate in real time. There's another project I saw, not that this is 2 years away or so, for headphones that have Translate built in so that you can talk to somebody and get translation in real time. That's where all this stuff is going to be really interesting, is when we put it into use in daily life.
Mm-hmm, and have it run in the real world. All right. Well, yeah, I'll be looking forward to real-time translation for my next trip. That would be a good service to run with. All right. Well, Christopher Penn, thanks for coming by to talk to us about artificial intelligence, AI, machine learning, and we will have you back very soon, I'm sure, to talk about other marketing topics. But if people need to get in touch with you and learn more, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, I just go to marketingovercoffee.com. We got all the goods there.
All right. That will do it for this week. Until next week, enjoy the coffee.
Enjoy the coffee. And question yourself, did we actually interview me, or is this an AI?